Okay, we'll start with this. Well, Mikey Garcia on his loss to Sandor Martin. It's no big deal. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of my career, Garcia told ES News. People might think a loss is such a big deal and going into depression. No, I'm not. I'm jumping right back in. I'm not worried about it. A loss is nothing. It's part of boxing. It happens. People take losses in other areas of life. You can't let a loss keep you down. Get the fuck up, move on. Leave it behind you. Go forward. You can't be dwelling on the past. You get all depressed and shit. You have to keep moving forward to what's next. That's how I see it. It's part of the sport. No big deal. It's not the first time I lost. I lost 12 times as an amateur. Who gives a fuck? Does anybody talk about that? Who cares? Move on. As Garcia reflected, he compared the 2.5-year layoff to his recent loss and that it will serve as inspiration and fuel moving forward. Coming back, I was hungrier than before the contract issues. It's weird how things happen, said Garcia. The Martin loss is actually more motivating now. I feel a bit more fire than before. My perspective is different. Boxing has changed a little bit where people think you're done after one loss. All the great fighters eventually take losses. As long as I'm healthy and I'm not absorbing any punishment and having physical trouble or able to live life and enjoy, that's different. Of course, nobody likes to lose, but you have to accept it. It's part of life.
He's not wrong.
I happen to agree with most, if not all of, everything Mikey Garcia said in reference to the view of the sport and how fighters are viewed after having suffered a loss. Many people jump to the conclusion that a fighter's career is over or that it's the beginning of the end as soon as a fighter suffers a loss, when really
There are a lot of other things you gotta look at.
other outlying factors not exclusive to a fighter having suffered a loss that denote the beginning of the end. Though rest assured, losses matter.
It's not that they don't.
They do, but it's not the only area you have to look at. And, you know, Mikey Garcia here today, he's about 33 years old, having suffered his second professional loss. I was right to assume that Mikey Garcia don't get out there for anything under $1 million. He made $1.5 million with Sandor Martin.
I was wrong to assume he'd retire after this.
It sounds like Mikey Garcia isn't quite ready to call it a career. We've been talking about what might happen moving forward for Mikey a lot here on the channel, because believe it or not, there are still other fights out there for him, other options.
He still has to get himself back in the winner's bracket.
And when that's going to happen is up in the air. Right now, it's a bit of a mystery, because I don't think the people over there at DAZN are in any hurry to give Mikey Garcia another $1.5 million to go out there and stink up the place the way that he did with Sandor Martin.
No way.
Mikey Garcia is not under contract with Matchroom, and he's not under contract with DAZN.
He ain't one of their fighters.
The basic idea behind the Sandor Martin fight was for Mikey to snap back from that stint of inactivity in the hopes that it would be a segue to a Regis Prograrius fight. So what's going to happen now? Is he going to run it back with Sandor Martin?
But DAZN give this guy another $1.5 million to do that.
Or are the people over there at DAZN going to tighten up their wallets with Mikey and tell him that they're willing to still do business with him so long as he goes straight into that Regis Prograrius fight? Is that the situation? Because I find it a little hard to believe that the people over there at DAZN would continue to pour money down the drain on Mikey Garcia's career. They gave this guy $7 million for a Jesse Vargas fight in the hopes that it would lead to a Pacquiao fight. That didn't happen. More recently, they poured $1.5 million down the drain, banking on Mikey, and he loses to Sandor Martin before he can even make it to Regis Prograis.
So do you think they want to spend more money on this guy?
I kind of get the sense that unless he's ready to go right into a Regis Prograis fight, maybe DAZN might tighten up their wallet and Mikey might have to look elsewhere to further his career and advance. I get the sense that he might find himself washing up on the shores of PBC Island.
Fox decided to extend the deal one more year.
And Mikey Garcia, he does move the needle, more so than a Gary Russell, more so than a Keith Thurman. Should Mikey Garcia decide to climb back into bed with Fox and the PBC, could Fox and the PBC find it in the budget? Give this guy $1.5 million to fight some guy, get him back in the winner's bracket so that they could feed him to, say, a Gervonta Davis? Seems realistic enough to me. It seems realistic enough to me because DAZN has spent quite a few dollars on Mikey Garcia for endeavors that didn't pan out. And I get the sense that unless Mikey's willing to go right into that Prograis fight, they're not going to keep pouring money down the drain on him.
I don't really think he was all that committed to that fight anyway.
I have maintained that the people at Matchroom and DAZN should have poured more interest into the career of Regis Prograrius than Mikey Garcia. Regis Prograrius, who actually had fought in the last 12 months on various platforms. He fought on the PBCs. He fought on Triller. And, he's more consistent than Mikey. Mikey sat out for quite a while, waiting for that Pacquiao fight to roll around. Perhaps longer than he needed to. And that Pacquiao fight, it never rolled around.
He should have at least been in a keep busy fight last year.
All he did in the year of 2020 was fight Jesse Vargas in the very beginning of 2020, February. The pandemic hit, and Mikey sat out the rest of the year, sat out most of this year as well. He only recently came back, and it seems that the time off has costed him. He's saying all the right things. He's got the right attitude, but what remains of his career isn't going to boil down to his attitude. It's going to boil down to ability. What does he have left?
What can he actually do?
He still seems like a guy, at least to me, that's looking to cash out. That he's only really out here for a limited time only, and he just wants one last big payday. One last hoorah. And if he's got to go somewhere else to get it, somewhere other than Matchroom and DAZN, I think he's willing to. And I think in the near future, we could see Mikey Garcia doing business with the PBC and Fox. Just in keeping with the theme of guys Matchroom has been spending quite a lot of money on, perhaps too much, Dan Rafael tweeted, per a source with knowledge and details, Triple G and DAZN Boxing have agreed to an amended contract that is out for signatures. The first fight of the updated deal will be the Unification versus Ryota Murata, December 29th in Tokyo.
That's going to be a big fight.
A very big fight in Japan, a very big fight in the land of the rising sun. Further driving the point home that this ain't your father's era of boxing, and not all mega fights are exclusive to the shores of the United States.
Let's put Drew Golovkin out there in the first place.
Ryota Murata's domestic celebrity in the land of the rising sun, because Ryota Murata is more of a celebrity in Japan than either Demetrius Andrade or Jermall Charlo are here in the United States. That, and let's be honest, it's a safer choice. Ryota Murata, he hasn't fought in 2 years.
Close to it.
December 29th, on the night of the fight, Ryota Murata will not have seen action since December of 2019 when he faced Canada's own Stephen Butler. That's the last time that guy had a fight. So compared to an Andrade or compared to a Charlo, you are facing a far less active fighter, a far less active champion in a unification match that is worth considerably more money.
It's the ideal choice for Triple G.
Without condoning or condemning, we see what the hierarchy of thought was and what hierarchy of thought went into that situation, that decision.
To sit out most of 2021 waiting for Murata.
Save the last 2 days of this year, Triple G will not have fought the entirety of 2021. In this fight with Murata, it's intended to be his first fight of an amended contract with DAZN. You have to wonder what happens beyond this fight moving forward if Triple G can secure the W. Triple G, who's an aging fighter, an aging champion. It's not a secret that DAZN decided to sign Triple G because they were invested in what could be a Canelo Alvarez trilogy. They wanted to do a third fight.
Canelo's a network and promotional free agent now.
Canelo Alvarez is free to fight who he wants, where he wants, when he wants, making a Triple G trilogy.
Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't.
And like the situation we saw with Mikey Garcia, DAZN has spent a lot of money on Triple G in the hopes that they might be able to stage an even bigger fight for him, and that really hasn't panned out. So you have to wonder, what exactly did they amend in this revised contract? What's the nature of the relationship moving forward?
Like, who's the lead promoter for the Murata fight?
Because in the land of the rising sun, I don't get the sense that Matchroom will be helming.
I don't get the sense that's a Matchroom show.
I get the sense it's Murata's people that are going to be handling that promotion. It's their town. It's their neck of the woods. And what happens if Gennady Golovkin wins that fight and unifies those two world titles? He is facing an active champion that's less active, even less active, than he is.
And what did they amend?
In this amended contract, Triple G is only 3 fights into his initial signing, his initial contract. It was supposed to be a 6-fight deal. This would be the 4th fight of that 6-fight deal. But now that the contract has been amended, What changes have been made?
Is it not a 6-fight deal anymore?
His DAZN debut was the Steve Rolls fight, which then led to the Sergey Derevianchenko IBF title fight for what was the vacant IBF title. Followed up on that by taking on mandatory challenger Kamil Zeremata. He hasn't fought on the platform since then.
That's only 3 fights.
Having debuted in America in September of 2018, that's roughly 3 years. 3 years into that debut, it can't seem at all cost feasible to the people over there at DAZN to continue spending money on Golovkin and Golovkin's fights the way that they have thus far. They gave this guy something like $14 million for that Sergey Derevianchenko fight.
Been frittering money away on this guy for years.
And what have you got to show for it? I've no doubts that it was their intention to attract more U.S. subscribers in signing Gennady Golovkin with the promise of a Canelo Alvarez trilogy, but look at where we are. This guy's fighting over there in Japan.
Canelo's not exclusive to the platform anymore.
He might return to DAZN and Matchroom, and he might not. Trilogy might happen, and it might not. It's all in the air. It's all immaterial. And at this point, it's not a secret that DAZN is scaling back their effort to corner the U.S. market. At this point, it's not a secret that DAZN is tightening up their wallet and how much they're willing to spend for a show. You wonder that these amendments that were made to this revised contract don't perhaps include a Golovkin versus Andrade fight. Demetrius Andrade, one of the other middleweight champions, Matchroom alum.
Just get the sense that the DAZN might want assurances from Golovkin.
Because of how much they've already spent on him and because of where they are now. Don't quote me on this. I'm just bouncing ideas around. I'm just speculating. But you kind of get the sense that if they're going to continue doing business with him, things can't keep going the way they've been going. With that, he's set to return to action December 29th in Tokyo, Japan, in a unification match with Ryota Murata. I think it's going to be a fun fight to watch for what it's worth.
Yeah, both of those guys can punch.
Both are former Olympians, neither one of which is getting any younger. Look for that towards the end of this year in Japan.
That's not all.
Those ain't even the only familiar faces that are going to be in action in Japan in the month of December. In other news, per tweet from Michael Benson, Naoya Inoue will defend his WBA IBF bantamweight titles against Iran Deepan on December 14th in Japan, according to the IBF website. No surprise that Naoya Inoue's next fight is going to be in the land of the rising sun because Bob Arum said as much after his latest appearance here in the States on ESPN. It's been well over a year since Top Rank decided to get into the Naoya Inoue business, and I won't lie to you, it seems like Naoya's career has slowed since then. Like, the momentum...
I don't know what they're doing with this guy.
They signed Naoya Inoue to Top Rank in November of 2019, late in that year, and we know that it was their intention to do a John Riel Casimiro unification match, but the pandemic hit, the investors pulled out, no live gate revenue. Essentially, the fight fell apart. That's understandable.
At least it was at that time.
It was, but now I find myself wondering, what effort have the people over there at Top Rank poured into revisiting that fight, or perhaps staging a Nonito Donaire rematch, which would be a unification match? Would bring Naoya Inoue one step closer to becoming the bantamweight division's undisputed champion. What exactly is Top Rank's plan for Naoya Inoue? Because what we see is he's returning to the land of the rising sun. His next fight is in Japan, and it's against a pedestrian-level guy, a guy with a pro record of 12 wins, 2 losses.
Never even heard of this fucking guy.
Saving grace for Naoya Inoue is that the fight is happening in Japan as opposed to the United States. The saving grace, the silver lining is that in Japan, Naoya Inoue is a pretty big name, pretty big star, so he'll draw a crowd regardless of who he's fighting.
But his relationship with Top Rank has been less than productive.
He's fought under the Top Rank banner 2 times since having signed with them in November of 2019. The Jason Maloney fight in October of last year, and the Das Marinas fight in June of this year.
None of those were big fights.
The pandemic had its role to play, it did, though I don't want to overstate the role of the pandemic because the people at Top Rank were still able to get Lopez versus Lomachenko over the line. So what effort is being put forth to get some unification matches for Naoya Inoue? I said it then, over a year ago, when news broke that Tom Brown of the PBC had won the purse bid for Daenerys versus Ubali, that's not an encouraging omen. It's not a good sign that somebody from the PBC bid on that fight as opposed to Top Rank. Top Rank, who were in the Naoya Inoue business. If you're in the Naoya Inoue business, you've got to secure him opponents. And that fight going to the PBC instead of going to Top Rank, that's not a good sign.
It was in January of last year.
That was pre-pandemic. Post-pandemic, what are the people at Top Rank doing now to get this guy unification matches? What's the plan of action? To no one's surprise, Nonito Donaire, the reigning WBC Bantamweight champion, who still has a working relationship with Richard Schaefer, he's one of the latest signees to Schaefer's new promotional outfit, Probellum. Just as well, Probellum has won the purse bid for Casemiro versus Butler. Butler, who is also a recent Probellum signee. Both John Riel Casemiro and Nonito Donaire, the other two world champions at Bantamweight, they're both under orders by way of the alphabets to satisfy their mandatory challenges. You have to wonder what happens beyond all of that, should both champions make it through those fights. What is Top Rank going to do to secure Naoya Inoue unification matches? You gotta think about the landscape at 118 pounds. You got two other world champions there you can secure as opponents for Naoya Inoue, perhaps easier than the guys upstairs at 122 pounds. At 122 pounds, you've got Stephen Fulton, a PBC fighter, holding the WBO, Brandon Figueroa, another PBC fighter, holding the WBC, and you have unified champion MJ Akhmadaliev, a matchroom fighter. Top Rank ain't got no ponies in that super bantamweight show, and making fights with the who's who guys up there could prove difficult. It might actually be easier to make fights with the two remaining champions at bantamweight as opposed to making fights with the champions at super bantamweight. And I think that the people at Top Rank, they need to hit the gas on this. Wasn't that long ago that Naoya Inoue hinted at a potential move upstairs to 122 pounds, though we see here and now that move isn't underway just yet.
His next fight's at bantamweight.
In defense of his WBA, IBF, and Ring magazine titles. Bottom line, Top Rank's got to do better. They've got to do more moving forward for this fighter, or just leave him alone.
Because if you're not going to secure him good opponents, then what's the point?